So tonight, consciousness, Dave Chalmers. You go by Dave, not David, right?
Sure.
Okay. He'll go by anything as long as he doesn't topple over there tonight. Tonight's salon is supported by Templeton World Charity Foundation, so we are very grateful that they believe in this sort of analog gathering to discuss ideas and hear interesting people talk about interesting topics such as virtual reality and consciousness. I want to introduce Karen, who's in town from the Bahamas, who's with Templeton. Do you want to say a few words about this giving area, the giving area of Templeton around consciousness? Yeah, just a sentence or two. So everyone understands Templeton is the reason why we're here, which is so great.
Yeah, so lovely to have you all here. Thank you so much. And Susan, you do a tremendous job, and all of your guests agree tonight is
well, that's nice. Thank you.
World, so thank you. And Dave, it's great to see you. So the Templeton World Charity Foundation indeed is based in Nassau. We are one of three of Sir John Templeton's philanthropies that he set up, one being John Templeton Foundation in Philadelphia, and two of us in Nassau, ourselves, as well as the Templeton Religion Trust. And in his charter, he wanted us to really explore the intersection of science and spirituality. And in this case, we are really talking to Dave tonight, and those of you who are here, which in a moment you're going to see how many people are actually here from this realm, but on accelerating research on consciousness. And in particularly, we call it ARC, Accelerating Research Consciousness, but particularly this initiative was set up several years ago with many of the people in this room there at an initial meeting.
Was it like pre-COVID? I'm now vaguely sort of remembering it. Yeah, okay.
2018, to really think about how to use empirical research in order to really support innovative experiments that would generate answers about consciousness. And if you think about 2018, for any of you who were following consciousness at that time, consciousness science had sort of fallen out of trend, and really Templeton World Charity Foundation wanted to pair philosophers and neuroscientists to think holistically about it. And so the way that my colleagues thought of this area of work was to think about adversarial collaboration. And in fact, we just lost one of the great leaders in adversarial collaboration, really the person who brought the term in some cases to the forefront, Daniel Kahneman, last week. But we celebrate the legacy in that he was very much a part of coming up with this idea, as well as, like I said, so many of the people here. So really quickly, if you're part of an adversarial collaboration for consciousness, raise your hand.
Oh, wow, it's quite a few.
Fantastic.
Wow.
If you are somebody who covers science, journalism, and consciousness, or would like to, raise your hand. Okay, so make sure you all connect tonight.
Yeah.
We have 5 adversarial collaborations happening. One of them released their findings last summer with quite a bit of to-do. There's a second one that David's a part of that I believe is already in preprint, and he'll talk about that tonight. So thank you so much for coming, and thank you, Susan, and thank you, David, for being phenomenal grantees.
Yeah, well, thank you. So for those who haven't been here, this is super informal. I'll ask some questions. I didn't take Philosophy 101, and I know other people did not either. And then there's others who are, philosophy experts. So we'll get through some quick questions initially for those of us who need a brief education. And then at the Q&A, those of you who are from this world, you can ask your questions. But briefly, Dave, most of you already know who he is. He's a university professor of philosophy at NYU. What are some of your other titles? There's so many. I don't want to look down.
Co-director of the Center for Mind, Brain, and Consciousness at NYU with my colleague Ned Block, who's right over there.
I see. Ned was in the kitchen a lot tonight, getting in there. It was while I was cooking. We're going to start off with a question you've been asked a million times. Can you briefly describe the hard and easy problem of consciousness?
Okay, well, first, thank you, Susan. It's such a pleasure to be here at one of Susan's legendary salons.
I have to say, reading for this, I felt like I needed another few more years, but might be one of my very favorite in terms of reading. And I did buy the last book of yours, In the Neighborhood.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you. And, yeah, so good to be here. I was here, I think, maybe about 5 years ago for a salon when Paul Davies was visiting, and that was fantastic. What a great environment for conversation
Thank you.
And ideas. And
we'll get into the
music.
flow, too, as the evening goes. It always takes a moment.
So consciousness. Yeah, for me, consciousness is subjective experience, is everything that you experience
This moment.
at a given moment from the first person point of view. So when this wonderful music was playing, my subjective experience was dominated by the flow of the music. But at the same time, I'm looking around the room and I'm seeing people. I'm having a visual experience. I'm teetering on this chair and trying to keep my balance. And I've got some consciousness of my body. I'm excited about the conversation we're going to have in this evening, and a little nervous with all these amazing people here.
Me too.
So I'm having a little stream of emotion. I'm thinking maybe about what we're going to talk about. All of these are parts of my stream of consciousness. For each of them, there's a subjective experience. There's something it's like for me to undergo them. And really, the hard problem of consciousness is how is it that you can explain these amazing subjective experiences that we have? How is it? I mean, it seems to have something to do with the brain. How is it that physical processes...
Why is it?
How and why is it? Absolutely.
Yeah.
That physical processes in the brain should give you any subjective experience at all. Why aren't I just like a giant robot, or what philosophers sometimes call a zombie, who's reacting to the world and behaving without any subjective experience at all? I mean, neuroscience is not bad at explaining our behaviors, the things we do, locomotion, perceptual information, integration. I can talk to you, I can point at you. That's all objective. That's the behavioral part. Those are the so-called easy problems of consciousness. Not because they're trivial. They're as hard as anything and as most things in neuroscience. But we got a research program for understanding those things, behaviors, functions, computations in the brain. When it comes to subjective experience, it's really something of a mystery. And that's why we call that the hard problem. It looks like the standard methods of explaining stuff in neuroscience don't really add up to an explanation of why is there subjective experience at all. How does, like the philosopher Colin McGinn said, how does the water of the brain turn into the wine of consciousness? Quite appropriate with all these wonderful drinks.
Well, we have a lot of wine around. Will there ever be a law of consciousness? Is that what you're going for?
It's an interesting question. I mean, my first book, actually, was called The Conscious Mind, but the subtitle was In Search of a Fundamental Theory, because we were looking for fundamental principles, maybe even laws, that might govern consciousness. Physicists say they're looking for a theory of everything. The fundamental laws of physics that will explain everything. Physics will explain biology. Physics will explain chemistry, which will explain biology, which will explain parts of psychology, and so on. But actually, in that book, I argued that all this objective explanation was never on its own going to add up to an explanation of consciousness. That doesn't mean you can't have a science of consciousness, but to me, that suggested you need something more, some more fundamental laws, fundamental principles that might connect, build a bridge from what we know about, say, processing in the brain and physical processes to consciousness. And in a way, that's to say that physics alone will not give us a theory of everything. We need a theory of consciousness to have a theory of everything. That could involve a law.
This is going to keep you with a job for a long time.
For sure. Philosophers have been worrying about this for 2,000 years and we're not done yet.
Yeah. Is consciousness a bit of a screw-up of evolution? I mean, I feel like to be conscious sometimes involves quite a bit of pain and not necessarily so much joy.
I mean, consciousness does kind of make room for meaning in our lives and value in our lives. It's what makes our
Value.
lives positive.
That's so great. That's a big takeaway, that consciousness adds value, brings value. Into
Yeah, I mean, but
for better or worse.
That is both positive and negative
Right,
value. It can bring with us experiences of happiness, awe, and amazing art, emotional experiences of love. But yeah, it also brings with it pain. It brings with it suffering. And so probably if you looked at the net value of consciousness over the whole course of evolution, you could make the case that there's been a lot more of the negative kind than the positive kind.
But does it make our existence better? Can we be a bit uppity in comparison to that, which probably isn't too conscious? It's not biological. Ooh, this plate behind you is going to fall. Okay, it's fine. No, it's okay. Sorry.
I think in a way, I think it makes our lives better simply by the very fact of consciousness, even if it's neither positive nor negative, makes our lives meaningful, gives us a locus of meaning in our lives. And that makes us different from, a chair or a wine glass, which presumably have no meaning of their own subjectively in their lives. I don't want to, make any assumptions about these wonderful wine glasses here. But we are locuses of meaning because we are conscious, and all the better if it's positive meaning. I think as humans, we have the ability to construct meaning in our lives and build
we're okay with
positive.
a little pain too. We're okay with a little pain. I think probably a lot of these books and arts come from pain we create from it.
Yeah, writing that book caused me years of pain. But, it was good to have it finally done. I don't know if the positive experiences from finishing it actually make up for all those negative experiences while writing it, but that's the way life goes, right?
Is our brains slightly kind of moving outside of our skull? You wrote a paper in the 90s with Scottish Andy. I can't remember his surname right now.
Andy Clark.
Andy Clark, Scottish Andy. In the mid 90s, the extended mind. Is that the extended brain? Okay, so I have a question for you on that.
Yeah.
And then you can explain what that is. I was thinking about this today. Okay, so would you want to say what the extended mind is in one or two sentences? Don't go off
Yeah,
too
it's
long.
basically the idea that the tools we use can become extensions of our mind. Back then, in the mid-90s, when we wrote the article, actually our main example was just something really boring, like a notebook. I mean, like a real physical notebook, someone who writes stuff down in a notebook and retrieves that information and it serves as their memory. But since then, the extended mind hypothesis has become absolutely ubiquitous, I think.
Okay, stop there. So I'm going to ask you, which here are all of these things part of the extended mind, or are they not? We have a Neolithic axe from 3000 BC.
Can be part of the extended mind, but I'd say that's maybe part of the extended body.
Okay.
It's a tool. You might try to smash this stuff with your hand.
Some of these things are
the axe does it better.
For sure, not the extended mind.
Yeah.
This is an Anatolian fertility figure from 1000 BC. Extended mind or not?
Insofar as that's part of sexual selection used to help attract a mate, maybe it could be seen as part of a psychological mating process.
Okay. Here we have knives and forks from the 1700s.
I'm thinking extended body. Instead of picking up your stuff with your hands, you're using a tool.
What about a fountain pen?
Once you start to write, then this really, people write in order to, sometimes just to communicate with each other, but sometimes you write to figure stuff out. Sometimes you write to lay down memories and so on. So I'd say, the advent of language and writing, very key part of the extended mind.
And then obviously, of course, the phone here.
Yeah, the iPhone is now, the smartphone has become the paradigm example of the extended mind. I mean, who actually remembers phone numbers with their brain these days? 1, 2, maybe. I remember them all with my smartphone. It navigates for us now. It helps us plan and make decisions. So many of the functions of our brains are now migrated to the smartphone. Some people say, "Oh, this is terrible. It's making us stupid. Google is making us dumb." But the optimistic perspective on this is us, in conjunction with this technology, have actually become much more intelligent and capable because of our extended minds.
Self-conscious, is that something you think about? I had a doggie that died a few weeks ago, and
well, I'm sorry.
That's all right. She was very old. So she was quite arrogant. I don't necessarily think she was self-conscious, but I do think she was self-aware. And the more I got to know her, I might have been able to sense she was self-conscious. So are we not doing a good enough job studying? Or we are studying, we're researching, but we tend to blow off animals quite easily.
Yeah, I think self-consciousness is a really important aspect of consciousness, especially it's an incredibly important aspect of human consciousness. We are all not just beings in the world, but we're conscious of ourselves as beings in the world. And our consciousness is kind of suffused with it. Yeah, here are all these people out there, but here am I. You know, we all feel like we are all at the center of our own worlds. But I think it's possible that, you know, I don't think self-consciousness is all there is to consciousness. I mean, you talked about
no.
You talked about a dog, or maybe a fish, maybe even an insect. Maybe there's some kind of consciousness of the world around them in perception without anything like full-scale self-consciousness, and arguably without any self-consciousness at all. So I think of self-consciousness as a fancy kind of consciousness that developed probably later in evolution than the more primitive kinds of consciousness.
So of course we think our dogs can be self-aware, right? As we get to know them, because we'd like to see ourselves in them sometimes.
Who was the guy with the Dognition lab at Duke and so on? Yeah, Brian Hare, maybe.
Yeah, we did.
Not cognition,
yeah, we did a salon with him in London. Yeah, no, he's great. Yeah.
Diverse intelligence.
Yes, we did a
right.
salon with him. I did a salon a few years ago with him.
Good, yeah. Diverse intelligence is all about, not just humans, but animals, but AIs, but aliens, who knows?
Yeah. If there's a completely rational reason for having consciousness, is there any reason why AI or a computer couldn't figure it out? I mean, we're not doing it necessarily, we're moving along, but we're still studying consciousness. Do you think?
This is the big, one of the big questions, which is suddenly on the forefront of so many people's minds right now. There was that Google engineer, Blake Lemoine, who said that he had detected consciousness in one of the language models he was playing with a year or two ago.
Very bad. Be quiet.
Google said no. There is no evidence for that, and there's definitely evidence against it. And I wanted to talk to Google and say, what is that evidence exactly? Because maybe they're onto something that the philosophers and the scientists need to know about. The fact is, we don't know for sure whether another system is conscious. It makes it very hard to know for sure.
How would we know? And if it does become conscious, how would we know whether it's suffering or not? And if it's suffering, is it moral for us still to be working on the computers?
It's such an important question, yeah. In the old days, we had this idea that the test would be the Turing test, that once a system can behave in a way indistinguishable from human beings, we would take it to think and be conscious. But now we have these language models which are actually, they don't yet pass the Turing test, but they're pretty close. There was actually a Turing test competition last year with a whole bunch of language agents based on GPT-4 and a whole bunch of humans. And it turned out people could judge the human to be human 60% of the time, and they judge the machines to be human 40% of the time, which is not quite good enough to pass the Turing test. But the humans are not doing well, people.
Yeah, they're definitely not doing well.
Give it a year or two, and they may well be passing those Turing tests. But then the question will just arise, are these systems producing all this amazing behavior because they're conscious, or are they mere stochastic parrots, as Emily Bender calls them, producing all this mimicry without any consciousness inside? So suddenly, that philosophical problem of other minds, is this system conscious, becomes absolutely crucial to the ethical question.
Right.
Because if it turns out these systems are actually suffering when we
pet
train
them,
then we may be that may lead to some kind of moral catastrophe, like the mistreatment of so many humans over the years and so many animals.
And laws changing around sentience in animals, of course.
Exactly.
Right?
We're actually at
Switzerland, the UK.
At NYU this Friday, we're going to have a big event on the emerging science of animal consciousness. People now think that insects may even be birds, most mammals, all birds. I think people are pretty confident they're conscious. Fish. I think the consensus of opinion is on the side of fish consciousness. Still some discussion of these things by my learned colleagues over there. Maybe even insects. And people think, there's actually going to be a declaration that we need to take seriously the possibility that not just fish, but maybe octopi,
Well, that's quite a popular topic,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The octopus topic, right? Great book. What's the name of the scientist? I can't remember his name right now. Anyway.
The philosopher Peter Godfrey
yeah, that's
Smith wrote a marvelous book called Other Minds, all
Very.
about the mind of an octopus.
Is anyone trying to hypnotize computers?
Wow, what a great question. Anyone know? Anyone know? Someone
Well, if
should.
they're conscious, right? Or
Yeah.
if you think that they might be conscious.
Yeah.
Hackers. Okay, yeah. Let's talk about the adversarial collaboration you had with your old friend Christoph, right? Was it a 25 or 30 year
Well, yes. So
bet that you
25
had?
years ago, there's a
Okay.
prelude to all these adversarial
okay,
collaborations,
okay.
which is a bet that I made with
Yes.
Christoph Koch way back in 1997.
Right, and I read that like a journalist had to remind you of the details or something,
Yeah,
which I
actually-
thought was hilarious, because also it was like 5 a.m. when you made the bet.
Something like that, yeah. We were at a conference in Bremen, Germany in 1997, and there had just been a session on neural correlates of consciousness. And this is all about the project of finding the brain basis of consciousness. You know, those processes in the brain that seem to be most closely associated with conscious experience. At this point, everyone was very excited by the project of finding a neural correlate of consciousness. And the question is, how hard or easy is that going to be? And Christoph was very, very optimistic. He said, I think we're going to find it in
He's
25
a
years.
scientist, of course he
Yeah,
is.
and I'm a philosopher.
Yeah.
We say now, slow down
We've been
a
sitting
minute.
around for 2,000
I said-
years talking about consciousness.
I said, we might get it eventually, but I think 25 years is very, very optimistic. So we made a bet. A nice case of wine. If we find that consensus is that we find the neural correlates of consciousness in 25 years, then Christoph wins, else I win. Anyway, 25 years on from it was 1998, and 25 years on from 1998
Last year.
2023, last year. So we actually had an event, and it turned out the Association for the Scientific Study of Consciousness, same event, same meeting we were at in Bremen
really?
all those years ago, was this time held in New York, just up the road from here at NYU. Ned helped organize it, as did
It was
Matthias,
everywhere.
Claudia,
We all read about it. I
many
mean,
others.
well
So we had to have an event to settle the bet.
How do you get
Heather
consciousness
Berlin,
everywhere. Yeah.
Heather Berlin, right here, moderated
Really?
the event.
Oh wow!
Christoph
Look, you're
and
all
I.
in the room. Christoph's not here. We did a salon with him years ago. Yeah.
Christoph is fantastic.
Yeah.
We
it's very fun.
we got up there on stage, and and then we'll cut a long story short. I won. But it turns out, we have not yet found the neural correlate of consciousness, but this actually plays into a much bigger story. The bet is kind of trivial in the grand scheme of things. The interesting story behind all this is all the collaborations, all the research which is going on right now to try and find the neural basis of consciousness. And in particular, these 5 big adversarial collaborations that Templeton World Charity Foundation has funded. I mean, all this goes back to a meeting in 2018 in Seattle that Heather was at and I was at. And one collaboration came out of that was about testing a couple of theories of consciousness against each other, the global workspace and the integrated information theory. Turns out at the meeting, in order to figure out who won the bet, we presented some results from that collaboration at the meeting last year. And basically, the upshot was that both theories lost.
So still a lot of work to be done and a lot to be funded.
Yeah, both theories met serious challenges. Neither of them got much support. So that was why I won the bet. However, that was just the first of 5 collaborations. We've got another one going on that's based right here in New York, which Ned and I are co-directing along with Bu He, who's a neuroscientist in the medical school.
Okay.
And she's amazing.
What's that?
And that is all about basically testing 2 different theories, another 2 kinds of theories of consciousness against each other. There's the higher order thought style theory of consciousness that says consciousness is all about having thoughts about your mental states. It's very highly cognitive, and it tends to suggest that the basis of consciousness is going to be in the front of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, which is where the thinking happens, to put it crudely. David Rosenthal here is a pioneer of the higher order thought theory of consciousness. Richard Brown over there is also
Oh my
representing,
gosh, we got all the rock stars
representing
in
the theory.
room.
So they are.
Let's go New York City.
So these guys are the adversaries, and on the other side is the first order theory of consciousness. Ned is himself a sympathizer of the first order theory of consciousness. As director of the project, he has to stay neutral. The official adversary on that side is a neuroscientist called Victor Lama, who's working in the Netherlands, who's put forward what he calls the recurrent processing theory of consciousness that makes consciousness a perception-based first order theory, largely based in the back of the head in the sensory areas like visual cortex. These are two very different visions of consciousness, perception versus thought, visual areas or thinking areas. And basically we came up with a couple of experiments to try and test the predictions of these theories. One involves so-called change blindness, where we detect changes in the environment and sometimes you see them, sometimes you don't. One involves subjective inflation, where certain things that you don't attend to get bigger. And in all these experiments, we want to look at the neural correlates of what people experience and see, are they in the back of the brain, in the sensory areas, or are they in the front of the brain? And we don't have the results of those experiments yet, so I'm not here to make news. However, we're quite far along. Quite soon we're going to have results from those experiments. And that may be adversarial collaboration number 2, and there's also 3, 4, 5. So probably within a couple of years, we're going to have results from all 5 of these collaborations. And these theorists, the whole point of an adversarial collaboration was the theorists had to put their money where their mouth is, or they had to at least make predictions in advance, sign on to saying, this is what I think the results of this experiment will be according to my theory. So, Richard says, here is what I predict. Victor says, here is what I predict. And then we'll get to see which one is right. And one of them is going to end up being wrong. I hope it's not you, Richard. And then that's going to at least be very embarrassing for them. It turned out, by the way, with our first adversarial collaboration, both of their predictions were wrong. But it turns out Danny Kahneman is very funny on this. He calls it the 15-point IQ gain. Retrospectively, now I'm much smarter. Now I can see why I should have predicted something else.
Okay, spinning it. Are you doing any work, or you have any thoughts around B2B, B2C, brain to brain, and brain to computer interaction?
I'm not doing any work on brain-to-computer interface, but I'm super interested in it.
And brain-to-brain as well, which is quite at the edge, right?
This is, in a way, if you like, putting the whole extended mind idea on steroids. I mean, already when
wafer in between, and
already when I talk to another person, you can be part of my my extended mind. My wife, Claudia, is very much part of my extended mind. She remembers things. She remembers my own memories much better than I do. She's a repository of my extended mind. So that's already brain-to-brain of some kind, even without high tech. Likewise, extended mind is already a brain-computer interface, even without a whole lot of high-tech wiring. But once you actually get the wiring and the circuitry in there, those connections become extremely high bandwidth. If we could have high bandwidth, connections brain-to-brain, that is going to be extended mind on steroids, and who knows what results.
A lot of connection with people.
Yeah. A lot of connecting.
Not so much privacy. Okay, let's move on swiftly for a few questions around your more recent book. Well done for seeing him through this book. I'm sure living with someone while they're writing a book always sounds exhausting to me. So the central thesis here is that virtual reality is genuine reality. Do you think having a meaningful life in a virtual world, which many people here will have experienced, is generational?
It's interesting. People of my age, when I say virtual reality, digital worlds, it doesn't sound so great. It's kind of fake or fictional. In the book, I actually argue for the view that virtual reality can be first-class reality. It can be fully meaningful.
Who here has not gone into a virtual reality of some sort?
Anyone who's played a video game has been in VR.
So most
who's used a VR headset like the Apple Vision Pro or the Meta Quest and so on? Those are the big ones right now. And the dream of, say, Mark Zuckerberg is the metaverse, we'll be able to start living our lives in virtual worlds. And so far, he hasn't made it sound super attractive. So I think
Well, he's bounced back in the last year.
Yeah.
So if a meaningful life exists in a virtual world, which of course many of us might believe that that's the case the more you're in there, how does one approach morality?
Well, I think, the value of these worlds, I think, doesn't exactly come from the worlds itself. So I think value ultimately comes from us and from our conscious experiences. And if we go in to a virtual world and we can have rich and valuable conscious experiences, and we can have rich and valuable relationships, then I think it can be just as meaningful as the physical world. I mean, look, in the short term...
It's an experience, is what you're saying. It's no different. It's an experience.
So far, it's very different. The kind of experiences you get
But
inside the Meta Quest are extremely impoverished. Even so, though, you can meet people, you can build connections.
Yeah.
There's a wonderful movie called We Met in Virtual Reality about a couple who got married based on meeting in VR. Okay, they didn't stay in VR to consummate the relationship. It's like, right now, you got to leave. I think the questions here are very philosophically interesting because, just as with AI, we've got the human mind, but now we've got artificial minds. It's a new kind of mind. It's a diverse intelligence. It's a test case for all our theories about the mind. Is an artificial mind a genuine mind? Here with virtual reality, it's like we've suddenly got a new case of reality. Is there a diverse realities initiative in TWCF? You guys ought to do this, because now we get to see, what kinds of reality might be meaningful, and is an artificial reality merely a second-class reality or a first-class one? At least, it's controversial. Many people want to say that VR is always and essentially going to be lacking something. But my view is, this kind of connects to the old idea of, could we be in a simulation? Could all this be?
Right.
Could all this be the Matrix?
Is it? But we can't prove it's not. It could be a really perfect simulation.
Yeah. Then the next question is, just say it is the Matrix. How do you feel about that? Is that a terrible thing? Does that make our lives meaningless?
No, we feel pretty special we're here tonight.
Or does life go on? We're still in this great salon at Susan MacTavish Best Place. It's still an amazing experience. We're still having these great conversations, hearing this great music. So my view is, even if we are in the Matrix, our life is pretty much as meaningful as it was before.
What about on the economics? I know you're not an economist, but say, you're in a virtual world and you want to buy your Chanel purse and you start spending all this time in your virtual world. Does that devalue the currency out in the real world? This might be a question for someone else, but
we need an economist on this. Right now, no one's prepared to...
The more time people are spending in a virtual world, the less they're probably spending out in the real world, which might, if more people are doing that, that devalues the currency. I don't know. I was thinking about this early this morning. I don't know if it's actually true.
People inside
we still need to pay the rent in the real world.
Yeah, I don't play a lot of video games, but people are actually, prepared to pay quite a lot of money for, for different tools that help them in World of Warcraft or, Minecraft
Minecraft.
Whatever the latest thing is these days. And these have rich economies of their own. Sometimes with Minecraft dollars, but sometimes actually with real outside world dollars. I mean, I don't know if this actually you need an economist to tell me what effect this has on the world outside.
I bet there's someone here who
rich.
might answer that question. One final question. Should we, and then we'll open it up to folks who are here, should we be trying to resist or embrace these corporate-built metaverses?
It's a good question. I mean, right now, all of this is being built by the tech companies, and this applies just as much to AI as it does to virtual realities. The AI systems are being built by, OpenAI in association with Microsoft, by DeepMind in association with Google, and so on. The virtual reality devices are being built by Apple and by Meta, and so I think their motives are very different from our motives. Like in building AI, fundamentally their motive is going to be to make a big profit off their AI. And I think we've already seen that's leading to a full steam ahead approach to AI, which may not be the one which is in the interests of humanity more broadly. I mean, there's both. Of course, there's the issue that, if AI suddenly gets extremely powerful, then this could be very, very dangerous for humans, and already is having, all kinds of potential negative effects on on humans. Furthermore, there's that issue we talked about, well, what if those AI systems are suffering? The companies fundamentally don't care about this stuff because of the profit incentive. And the same.
Do they all have philosophers in-house?
There's a couple of them do, actually. A former student of mine is now working
That's a sweet job.
at Anthropic.
For a moment till you're laid off, but it's a sweet job.
One of my PhD students here at NYU is actually copyright counsel for OpenAI, defending them in lawsuits, and so on. So yeah, it's very. Actually, there's a lot of interaction between.
I would imagine, right?
Quite a lot of people in these tech companies have a background in philosophy. For example, Demis Hassabis.
Demis definitely does,
Yeah.
and he speaks about it a lot. He has a neuroscience background.
And they take this stuff seriously, but still, I kind of suspect at the end of the day, it's more lip service than driving their decisions.
You have a board, and most of the companies are public, so,
Well, we saw this with OpenAI, right? And the whole Sam Altman thing, where the board tried to fire Sam Altman on the grounds that they thought he was not. I gather that they thought he was not taking safety worries seriously enough. But what we saw was within 2 or 3 days, the whole money incentive found a way, and maybe he was going to move to Microsoft, or the whole company reassembled behind him. And that just the attempt.
Silicon Valley came to action.
Yeah. So it turns out the financial incentives are winning out here, and without very serious government regulation, I think in the case of AI and VR, it's probably going to continue to be that way. And we can hope that it leads to a good outcome, but I think there's not a guarantee. And fortunately, I'm not. It's not like if I was running the world, I'd do it better. It's like I don't know exactly the right way to design AI and to design VR, so it leads to a good outcome. But I do think it takes a lot of hard philosophical thinking. It takes paying a lot of attention to the latest results from the science, from knowing the technology, and I do think that we're going to have to think very, very seriously about where this technology is going.
I think it is quite hard to maybe make all of us individually think about it. I don't know how one does that, but it is important, right?
We need
to take it on ourselves personally, to have a bit of a think.
Yeah, that Vision Pro is fantastic for watching a movie on a plane. For kids these days, ChatGPT is certainly helping them write their.
By the way, no ChatGPT clearly used tonight. I meant to say that.
Oh man, I ran all your questions through ChatGPT.
No, I didn't read. I didn't.
Yeah.
No. Obviously, it must have sounded like they weren't through ChatGPT. Okay. Well, with that, questions here. Let's keep this to like 10 or 15 minutes. He's not going to run away. You guys are going to stick around this evening, I hope. So you can ask more questions afterwards, because then we'll have music from Jet, great music, and dessert. So a few questions. Okay, I'm going to go with you, Melissa. You flew in from San Francisco. So yes, yay for that. Melissa's a partner at NEA, and she's like deeply in Silicon Valley, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry for all those mean things I said.
Yeah, no. She's fine with it. I know she's fine with it.
My question to you is, and I haven't read your book, apologies, but what is your perspective on psychedelics, psychonauts, and that exploration of consciousnness?
In principle, I'm totally in favor of this. I think we need all the data we can get about different kinds of conscious experience. And, normal human experience is rich, but it's just one very small subset of the space of possible conscious experiences. So the more we can do to broaden the space that we have access to, the better. In fact, someone criticized my first book, The Conscious Mind, on the grounds that this guy should just be doing psychedelics all the time to maximize the first-person data. But I'm glad that people are doing this now, and there's now a very serious science of psychedelics.
Is there there is at NYU? Isn't there? I think there is.
Who's doing this?
I can't remember.
At
I don't know
NYU?
who it was, but there is now.
Yeah.
With Beckley, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole. You go to a consciousness conference now, and there's always sessions on psychedelics. A little. It hasn't yet transformed my philosophy.
It's amazing, though, being a student of consciousness and then actually going and experiencing some of these. I would love to hear from someone who studied consciousness and then
I see, yeah.
experiences.
I mean, there are wonderful books. The book by Michael Pollan, of course, who is all about psychedelics. He's now writing a book on consciousness.
Yeah.
partly informed by psychedelics, but also approaching it using the philosophy,
Really?
the science, and the
I
literature.
did a salon with him before he'd done a psychedelic, but I knew he was thinking about it, and I brought over.
It's going to be a great book.
Yeah.
There are
This was years ago.
There are neuroscientists who've taken this stuff very seriously. I mean, one guy, Robin Carhart Harris.
At
very
Imperial
well-known.
College.
Yeah.
He's at Imperial, I
Yeah.
think, yeah.
It actually always
He,
his name.
but now at Hopkins.
Who's where?
Is he?
Oh, he's, oh,
in
in-
Berkeley.
He moved to Berkeley.
Yeah.
Okay.
okay, so let's move
Yeah.
on to another question down here.
Hi, I'm Hannah Waters. I'm the editor at Quantum Magazine.
yeah.
Marine Biology.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah. So my question for you is: do you think we understand enough about the biology of the brain to really generate anything approaching an accurate theory of consciousness? And secondly, is there any part of neuroscience research that's exciting you these days?
Oh boy. I think we do not understand the brain terribly well at all, but we can build theories nonetheless of various cognitive capacities, sometimes based on thinking about them computationally, or thinking about them behaviorally, or based on what we do know about the brain. So what we've seen is fairly rich and respectable biological theories of consciousness compared to what there was 30 years ago. For example, the global neuronal workspace theory. It took an old idea that consciousness might involve a big central clearinghouse in a cognitive architecture and found a fairly plausible hypothesis about how that could be grounded in the brain. Or the higher order theories of consciousness pioneered by people like David Rosenthal have now there's a number of hypotheses about how that could be grounded in the brain. So it's a long process. I think we're not even remotely close to a final theory yet. But it's all of neuroscience is a slow process in general. What is exciting me in neuroscience? Well, I'm most interested in the science of consciousness, and therefore I'm super interested by what's coming out of current experiments now on the neural basis of consciousness. But there's also super cool experiments being done on animal consciousness or infant consciousness, which is the expertise of my wife, Claudia Passos.
Infant consciousness.
Yeah. And there are now some very cool experiments trying to figure out whether infants are consciousness by looking at the electrophysiological waves that the brain emits in infants. You play them certain sounds, beep, 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 boop. And I say, oh my God, that's not what we expected. And you get a little brainwave suggesting, oh my God, they noticed that.
At what age does this start happening?
It turns out even very
What? Like day one?
Turns out even 35 weeks you get this in a fetus.
Oh, really? Well, I mean, I guess
only a very late-term fetus.
Mummies know that when they're like, oh, my kid's gonna be a musician. They always like the music, right?
But it turns out, it requires this. They get these very complex patterns. Actually, it goes beep 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 boop beep 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 boop beep 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 boop beep 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 beep. And it's like, oh, the last one is a pattern that you didn't expect, and you still get that brainwave even from a 35-week-old fetus. And so on. That some people suggest is a sign that there's possibly conscious. I mean, these are only very late-term fetuses, so this doesn't yet impact things like the abortion debate,
Right.
And so on. But this is super interesting stuff coming out of the neuroscience that's now telling us something about infant and animal consciousness.
Questions over here? Okay, Jet, you our artist of the evening. Artist of the evening.
Indirectly, I've been attached to your work for my entire undergrad because I studied cognitive neuroscience at Penn. You were taught by Douglas Hofstadter.
Oh yeah.
And you taught Lisa Marachi was my professor.
Oh, Lisa's amazing. Yeah.
She's amazing.
Yeah.
She's amazing. And I have suffered indirectly balancing your arguments indirectly with a lot of works in cognitive neuroscience, hence why I quit and became an artist. But I'm fully with you entirely with transhumanism. If I throw my phone across this room right now, I feel it, and I feel like everybody in this room spends more of their time occupied in digital space affecting the physical. So I accept that, but I have to ask you this in a critical way, because I've thought about it for too long. Do you think that consciousness is actually something that could be generalized into an insignificant manner? Do you feel like consciousness is something that we're experiencing from a relative standpoint as humans in this emergent property? But do you think doing away with it entirely and indirectly becoming that space where we're in a zombie universe, I am a zombie speaking to you, physical constraints are moving me, and that's accepted? What happens to your field when that happens? And how often do you balance that out in terms of the spaces you're exploring?
Okay. Should we turn ourselves into zombies because, I don't know, because consciousness is a drag?
Or are we actually zombies making the emerging mistake of this significance?
That we think we're so important that
we are
have
actually zombies who are under the illusion that we're conscious. Yeah, this is actually not so far from the view that my PhD advisor, Doug Hofstadter, actually had. He's the guy that wrote the book Gödel Escher back in the late 70s. And yeah, I went to work with him at Indiana in the early 90s. He's amazing. He's very sympathetic. He co-authored a book with Daniel Dennett called The Mind's Eye. And Dennett has actually become maybe the prime mover of the view, sometimes called illusionism, that consciousness itself is an illusion. We are not conscious. One way to put this view is we are in fact all zombies who think we are conscious because we have these mistaken models in our head, probably built in by evolution, that need to make us feel like, yeah, we're all special and stuff.
Again, can't not prove that necessarily currently.
Well, many people think that this is like disproved by our current experience. Descartes said, there's one thing I know more closely than I know anything else. I think I am conscious, therefore I am. But then the illusionist comes along and said, that may just be the illusion speaking. Yeah. So I respect this view. I find it very hard to believe, but I've been interested to see illusionists actually exploring that view. A former postdoc in our center, Francois Cameron, is writing a wonderful book about this now called House of Mirrors, because he basically thinks consciousness is an illusion produced by this House of Mirrors. So it's a great view.
Can I ask a quick brief follow-up? I'm also a student at Max Tegmark.
Oh, fantastic.
An equation.
Yeah.
So I'm saying in the space of now with AI and computational mechanisms becoming such a part of our day-to-day experience, and that leading to the idea of your theory that you like to explore with the simulation being something that we potentially can understand through the physical makeups of the universe around us being quantifiable through computational tools. In that sort of setting, if we are in a simulation, would that by nature then make us philosophical zombies? In that scenario.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't see why just because we're in a simulation that makes us zombies. It's like, if you're like a bio-chauvinist, sorry, I don't mean to be mean. My colleague Ned Block is thinks that at least is sympathetic with the idea that to be conscious you have to be biological, which
I'm a bio-chauvinist.
And he's proud of it. Yeah.
He thinks consciousness requires meat.
Yeah.
We gotta be a meat machine. Has anyone seen that wonderful short story also made into a video where the alien robots come down and say, oh my God, they're made of meat. Human beings. Who could believe that meat would be conscious? But anyway, Ned's view is you need to be meat to be conscious. My view, I'm more of a pluralist. I think the actual physical substrate probably doesn't matter. It's more the information that it processes, the computations that it produces. And if it turns out that we're in a simulation, then I guess I would say that's going to be all the more reason to think that, digital entities can be conscious. Because, hey, I'm conscious and I'm in a simulation. I guess we could be like Neo in the Matrix. Remember, he's still actually got a meat brain, which is connected to the digital world. So if you're like Ned, and you want to say you need meat to be conscious, then we could be in a Matrix-style simulation where your meat brain is generating it. But I don't think it has to be that way.
Thank you.
George, this is it. This is it, guys. And then we're going to have music. And you can keep asking questions, George.
So I have a question. I'm a clinical scientist. So I have a question about how machines, I can't quite see how machines could get consciousness because they don't have a way to conserve it and pass it on. So presumably humans.
But just to conserve it and pass it on?
Like we conserve things genetically and pass it on and they develop. Presumably we evolved consciousness in steps over long millions of years. Like rudimentary consciousness of being cold is really adaptive because it's economical, right? So machines don't have a way to do that. And so they could be, I suppose we could make them conscious deliberately if we figured out how to do that by programming them, but we don't have a way to make them, to give them any kind of similar thing.
Well, could we?
We don't know what we have to do to make a machine conscious. We also don't know what has to be done to make a biological system of conscious. That's part of it. We don't have a solution to
But
the...
if you take something like temperature, I'm really interested in temperature because it's so simple.
Okay.
We've evolved a rudimentary sense of being hot or cold because it's very economical. Like I came here with a leather jacket. I took it off.
Yeah.
Saved a lot of calories instead of having my body cool me down, right? So
I'm cooking here.
So, and presumably that happened sort of accidentally. Some creature didn't have a leather jacket on, but did something else, and then it got conserved in the genome and evolved slowly, maybe something simpler than that, and gradually morphed into how we have broader consciousness. We don't know how that happened, but it presumably happened through a gradual process of evolution.
And we don't know how consciousness evolved. And one of the reasons is, we didn't quite touch on this, we don't actually know what consciousness is for. What function is consciousness needed for? It turns out so much of what consciousness does can be done without consciousness. You might think, well, we could have been zombies doing all this stuff with no consciousness at all. So until we know what consciousness is for, it's going to be very hard to model its evolution. That said, there are people, I saw a fantastic talk a couple of weeks ago in Santa Fe by this guy Blaise Arcas, who works at Google, who was modeling bioevolution with digital bits of code. Basically, simulating evolution with bits of code and then evolving very simple features, at least, that were analogous to simple features you find in the evolution of organisms. So I'm at least open to the idea that we could find similar patterns in digital systems to the ones we find in biological systems. I do think that if in principle you've got a silicon being with, say, silicon chips that function exactly the same way as our neurons do, then there's every reason to think that would be conscious in the way that we are. That doesn't yet tell us how it evolved. It just tells us that you don't need, carbon-based biology to get consciousness. But it would be fantastic if we can tell some evolutionary story. There's a few evolutionary stories out there right now. Eva Jablonka, the Israeli scientist, has a wonderful book about the role of learning in the evolution of consciousness. You might like that, but evolution of consciousness is a super hard problem.
We can propose those without really getting into the brain because it's too complicated to figure out. But
that's one nice thing about these about computational models is, the brain is a mess. The brain is very messy and hot and difficult to work with, and people don't like having their skulls cut open and so on. So it turns out that to do the experiment. So it turns out you can do a lot with computational models.
Sorry, just
No, it's interesting.
Blockchain, isn't that the evolution? The
Blockchain consciousness.
DNA will the connected DNA of technology.
Is anyone working on blockchain consciousness? They should be.
We could. Well, in the future, we'll be merging increasingly biological and mechanical things, which will, this is presumably where we're going someday. These sort of bio people. We already have mechanical things in us. At some point, it'll be somewhat indistinguishable.
You were talking about brain to brain, building bigger brains. We're going to have AI to AI, building bigger brain, bigger AI. The AIs are going to connect to the brains. Are we all going to turn into the Borg? I kind of hope not. I kind of hope there's going to be some room for individuality and individual consciousness at the end of all this, but I cannot predict the future.
Don't sign up, guys. Don't sign up. Well, thank you so much, Dave.
Thanks, Susan.
Thank you.
Thanks for the great conversation.
I really appreciate you coming over here, and also Templeton World Charity Foundation for caring about these sorts of conversations. Thank you.